Chattanooga. Together. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. I can feel God's mighty power and God's grace. There's a holy hush around us. I see love in every face. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place.
Surely the presence of the Lord is right here and right now. As we open our hearts and as we open our minds, we go to that quiet and still place within, and we can feel that power. We can feel that guidance. We can feel a healing. We can feel the presence of God. We can feel that energy flowing through every part of our body. And as we allow that to be, as we allow it to grow, as we allow it to shine through our thoughts and our feelings, we know that we are guided and directed in everything that we do. And there is a presence and power that built the universe, created everything in it, that is there right alongside of us, closer than our breath, whispering in our ear, that still small voice. So we give thanks for this beautiful day, for this time to be together, and for God's presence in our lives. Thank you, God. So it is. Amen.
Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. I can feel God's mighty power and God's grace. There's a holy hush around us. I see love in every face. Oh, surely the presence of the Lord is in this place.
Well, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Penny Worth, and it is my pleasure to welcome all of you here this morning. You know, we believe that you're always in the right place at the right time, and I thank you for joining us today. I also want to welcome all of you who are on Facebook this morning. You know, each and every one of you are just as much a part of this Sunday experience as the people who are with us in person. Please don't forget to like us, and I hope you'll be able to share some comments with us while you're watching the service. I want to begin today always by thanking the people who make this service happen. We have Terry in the back who just celebrated a birthday a couple days ago. And today we have Eva and Tony Carter here as our AV team.
Thank you.
And there's also our very own minister of music, Landis Batts. And of course, our CEO, which in church means, where did I have it? Where do I have it? Oh, Chief Enlightenment Officer, Doug Worth. I practiced that before. I can't believe I forgot it. Unity of Chattanooga is a part of a worldwide network of Unity churches founded back in the 1800s by Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. And you all know the phrase, change your thoughts, change your life, which is all about our inner work. This is one of our basic teachings, and it's just as important today as it was 200 years ago, especially with all the temptations that are out there to focus outside of ourselves with social media. It has been said that the largest and greatest room in the entire universe is the room for personal growth, and we are dedicated to the transformation of individual lives with spiritual awakening for the better. Here at Unity, relationships are at the heart of our life's work. We share our love together, we share our laughs together, we share our lives together. And now is the time in our service where we get to welcome one another this morning.
Let's greet our neighbor with a handshake or a hug.
We are all friends here. There are no strangers. You walk inside. What's up, yes? Welcome you to linger in a family of love and hold you in our hearts the way you are. We are all friends here. There are no strangers when you walk inside these doors. Oh, we welcome you to linger in our family of love and hold you in our hearts the way you are. We are friends here. There are no strangers when you walk inside these doors. We welcome you to linger in a family of love and hold you in our hearts the way you are. Don't it? Last thing I remember saying bye to yesterday. Glad to see it's over, pulling covers over my head. What were were you doing while I drank the night away? 'Cause I can tell that something's different and my eyes ain't even open yet. I'm smelling coffee, birds are singing just outside. Here comes your mercy, streaming in with the morning light. My heart is racing, waking up to your smile. Listen, good morning, yeah. It's a good morning. I remember reading you're the God who never sleeps. While I've been dreaming, you've been singing over me, singing about my freedom, waking me up to hear your song. And I can't dance hard enough, 'cause yesterday is gone, gone, gone. I'm smelling coffee, birds are singing just outside. Here comes your mercy, streaming in with the morning light. My heart is racing, waking up to your smile. Listen, good morning, yeah, yeah, yeah. Good morning. And every little breath, heartbeat is a gift of love you give to me. Every little breath, heartbeat is a gift of love that you give to me. You keep giving even when I'm asleep, 'cause I know you never stop watching over me. I wake up, my past is gone, your mercy's new with the morning sun. I'm forgiven, I'm free, it's a brand new day. Your faithfulness is the greatest. Hey, I'm smelling coffee, birds are singing just outside. Here comes your mercy, streaming in with the morning light. My heart is racing, waking up to your smile. I'm smelling coffee, birds are singing just outside. Here comes your goodness, streaming in with the morning light. My heart is racing, waking up to your smile. I'm smelling coffee, birds are singing just outside. I feel your loving rising in me from inside. My heart is racing, waking up to your smile. It's a good morning, yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a good morning, yeah. It's a good morning. Oh yeah, it's a good morning, yeah. All right, good morning.
It is a good morning. Yeah. Wow. And it's getting a little cooler these days, too. Instead of 90s during the day. Yeah.
Oh,
Wow.
next week's coming.
Yeah, next week.
It's supposed to be hot.
Oh, man. Oh, well.
Oh, well.
Well, last week we talked about some of the events in our life that cause us to rethink our journey, why we're here and what's important to us, what it might take for us to have a significant wake-up call and reprioritize ourselves, what it might take to awaken to a deeper purpose and life experience. And sometimes it's a traumatic event, like the Miracle on the Hudson story we told last week, where Captain Sully Sullenberger lost all power in his U.S. Airways flight shortly after takeoff after hitting a flock of Canadian geese. Well, we know that he skillfully landed the plane in the Hudson River, saving all 155 people on board. But in the aftermath, many passengers and crew reflected on the shortness and preciousness of life, what was truly important to them, and made significant changes in their jobs and in their relationships. It's a wake-up call. Sometimes it's a great materialistic goal in life that, if achieved, will bring us the happiness we seek. How many of us think about winning the lottery? Every hand goes up, yeah. Well, we talked about the Alone television show where 10 survivalist people faced the hardships of life in the wilderness alone in order to be the last one standing and win $500,000. But the difficulties, the stresses and the strains, and the hardships they endured brought up all their inner fears, old hurts and misgivings, and caused them to question the importance of that goal versus the gifts and beauty of life that they already had in the world. As person after person dropped out, they reemerged, changed at depth, thankful for the experience with a new perspective of who they were and what was truly important to them, the gifts they already had in their life. Again, a wake-up call. And we touched on the concept of a soft and hard landing from the 12-step community, which describes the level of pain and dysfunction some experience to addictively medicate and escape their troubles before embracing their core issues and turning their life around for the better. Because once we embrace those issues, once we clean out the pipeline, God's energy flows right through. Psychologists tell us that to the degree we can embrace our vulnerability, our shadow side, which some people call, to the degree that we can be with it and own it, is the degree to which we can heal and claim our strength. It's the power to hang in there with the questions, be present in the uncomfortableness of it, and choose consciously and wisely rather than simply reacting and blaming, fussing and fuming, or self-destructing through addictions and dysfunctional behavior. Robert Browning remarks in his poem Bishop Blaugram's Apology, he says, "When the fight begins within himself, a man's worth something." Gary Simmons, the head of Unity's conflict resolution team, calls this process awareness and describes the process in his book, Eye of the Storm. And Eye of the Storm is not E-Y-E, it's Eye of the Storm. And one of our first spirit groups a few months ago studied that book in detail. It is said that soon after his enlightenment, the Buddha passed a man on the road who was struck by the extraordinary radiance and peacefulness of his presence. And the man stopped him and asked, "My friend, what are you? Are you a king?" "No," said the Buddha. "Are you a celestial being or a god?" "No," said the Buddha. "Are you some sort of magician or wizard?" "No," replied Buddha. "Well then, what are you?" "I am awake," replied Buddha. So what does awakening look like? Well, in last week's final episode of the Alone series, 3 people remained on day 55. Imagine 55 days out in the Canadian world. I mean, the mosquitoes must be just enough, you know.
It was cold, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. Well, by day 55, it was the dead of winter. It was cold, snowy, windy, stormy. The lakes were frozen over, you know, and you can imagine what your food sources are. None, right? Well, 3 people remained out of 10. One man still desperately clung to his dream of winning the $500,000, primarily because of what he thought he could do with the money for his family. But his body was failing from hunger and from cold, and the medical team, which regularly stops in to monitor people's health, noticed this with alarm and very concerned. And as they discussed the situation with the man, he realized that if he continued, he might never see his family again, and pondered what their lives would be like without him. And he reflected to the camera on his own life without his father, who was in prison, never to be released. It's funny how things tend to come back around. Well, with tears in his eyes, he looked at the camera. He talked about his wife and 5-year-old son and said, I really already have the greatest gifts a man could have. And as you watch the film, as the words left his lips, there was a peacefulness that came over his face. And in the last scene, as he gathered up his belongings, he showed 2 gifts for his son that he'd carved skillfully and beautifully out of wood. One was a toy that you could hold on to, and there was a little ball attached to it, and you could flip the ball up into the cup, which is something you can do in the woods if, a very, very simple thing. And the other one was a car, and they're just absolutely beautifully done. Well, one other particularly tough and rugged man had made a net to catch fish, which had become his reliable food source. And when the lake froze over, he cut this big long swath in it to lower the net down and packed the opening with moss to prevent it from freezing. And apparently moss would do that, and he knew that. However, on day 66, strong winds the night before had created huge waves, which broke up the ice and carried his net away. And as he stared at the scene and the rising sun in the background, he knew that his time in the wilderness was over. And he expressed gratitude for the experience. He talked about his 30 years of drinking, all the people who told him that he drank too much, and his misgivings about a life that could have been. And as he faced that selfie camera, he said, "This experience has allowed me to forgive my father and all those others, but most of all, forgive myself." And he smiled as he made the call to tap out. So one man remained. His name was Alan. The medical crew showed up, supposedly for a medical check, with the usual camera crew in tow. And for Alan, nothing seemed out of the ordinary with that. And after the medical check, he was okay physically, but they asked him how he was doing anyway. He didn't catch on to the interview. "Okay, I guess, but it's getting close to the time to go," he said. "My body is giving me signals, and there might be only a few days left. You don't want to push this too far and lose what's most important to you." Obviously very centered, very, very exact comments. Well, they pursued the interview. "What have you missed most during this experience?" they asked. And as the cameras focused in on his face, in the distant wooded background, you could see his wife approaching. She had this huge Carhartt jacket on, which seemed too big for her, and she struggled through the knee-deep snow. Well, with that question, he looked down into his jacket, covering his face, paused for a few moments, and then said, "My family, the kids, but most of all, my wife." And he began to talk a little bit about his home life and the everyday things that he had taken for granted just a few months before. And it could have been the cold that triggered his runny nose and misty eyes, or maybe some more sensitive thoughts that just came up. And then she touched his shoulder. They embraced with a love and a relief and a joy that is beyond explanation. You might want to go home and stream the last 3 minutes of Alone, Season 10, August 17th and take a look at that scene. A few moments later, as they began to talk, he looked at her and he said, I'm more excited about seeing you than winning. So imagine somebody just put $500,000 in your back pocket, and what are you concerned about? She wanted to see his dwelling, where he lived for 2 months. And as she followed him into the snow-covered teepee, she asked him about the experience what were the experiences that are going to stay with you from this? And he talked about the quiet evenings fishing at sunset, and a mystical experience with an owl that stayed close to him for a long time one night in a nearby branch, reminding him of his dad. And he felt that experience with the owl was his dad's way of saying, hey man, I'm right here with you. Some of his words were overlaid on film clips of the area as they were leaving. And here's some of the things that he said. Experiencing this makes me realize how important my family is to me and how important it is to tell them how much they mean to me. It just solidifies how much I have and how lucky I am. The money is going to give me some freedom, but the alone experience has taught me that anything is possible with hard work and the right attitude and positive thoughts. With that, you can achieve the most amazing things. Now, what we know is the alone experience is difficult. It's and designed to push people to their limits. And what we've seen under the lure of big bucks and the disguise of entertainment is the stripping away of all those outer cultural attachments that we think we need and we think we want. And those inner memories, beliefs, and habits of thought that perhaps would hold us back. Things that are churning down in there that don't make us feel so good. For all those that we've seen on the program, there was a transformation, there was a healing, an awakening to the gifts of God that they already had. It's a lesson that we can see in our own lives if we look deeply enough. I'm reminded of a passage in the book of Hebrews. It says, "My child, do not regard lightly the discipline of the Lord, or lose heart when you're chastened by him, for the Lord disciplines those whom he loves, and chastises every child whom he accepts." The passage continues. Discipline always seems painful rather than pleasant at the time, but later it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness. Therefore, lift your drooping hands and strengthen your weak knees and make straight paths for your feet, so that what is lame may be healed. Jesus said something similar to his disciples. He said, "I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine grower. He removes every branch in me that bears no fruit. Every branch that bears fruit, he prunes to make it bear more fruit." Well, clearly the writers of the texts are telling us that, we have some inner stuff that needs to be removed before we can awaken to God's greater gifts in our life. Blocks that must be removed before we can experience these greater gifts. And that's the process that we saw in the Alone series. Jesus continues, "If you abide in me," in other words, in the Christ presence, "and my words abide in you, ask for whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. My Father is glorified by this, that you bear much fruit and become my disciples." What we saw over and over in the show was the stripping away of all the outer material things. And what was revealed as each person left the show was love for their family, forgiveness of past hurts or mistakes, and appreciation for the life that they already had. The very mental characteristics we talk about every week that awaken the Christ presence, the gifts of God within each one of us. And it is those things that they wished for and received as they left the show. Alan, the winner of Season TED, said something profound in his final thoughts as the helicopter flew off. He said, "Some people recharge by being around people. I recharge being alone." Now, maybe that helped him in the series. But it's the classic definition of the difference between an extrovert that recharges with other people and an introvert that recharges by being alone. And throughout the show, Alan did not display the inner turmoils that many of the other participants did. He seemed to be at peace with himself as he struggled with the outer conditions of life in the Canadian wilderness. And although the show did not address each participant's spiritual life, I suspect Alan was more centered than most. He knew himself more deeply and was doing what he loved even more so than striving for the money. He said, "This experience on Alone has definitely deepened what nature and all the things I love about the outdoors has shown me. It has deepened the importance of it right down to my soul. This experience is the pinnacle of my adventure seeking." He didn't talk about the money. Alan was involved in something much more than a contest and a challenge to win $500,000. He was doing what he loved to do, taking it to the limit, committing himself for the experience of it. It was an inner exploration. And in the end, it was those characteristics, motivation, and intentions that allowed him to persevere. I'm reminded of the ancient Greek maxim that says, "Know thyself." We've all heard it. Some people think it's in the Bible. No, it's ancient Greek. And Socrates observed, it is the sump of all philosophical commandments. And Aristotle remarked, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. The point is, knowledge of your own emotions, being familiar with your desires, your abilities, your goals, your ambitions, is the step that will take you to whatever you want to achieve in life. In Unity, we often say that there are many paths up the mountain, many ways to understand ourselves and awaken to the gifts of God that we are all heirs to. One such path is affirmative prayer and meditation, which we teach, demonstrate, and highly recommend. However, it is a path that is decidedly introvertive, very much a discipline of recharging by ourselves. In my ministerial school experience, every one of our instructors and all but one of the staff tested introvertive on the Myers-Briggs personality profile. Every one. Me too. Okay. Now, one thing you need to know is that the Myers-Briggs is a sliding scale between extrovert and introvert. It's not an all or nothing characteristic. You can be partly here, partly there, somewhere on the scale. We can have aspects of both while leaning more strongly in one direction or the other. However, people in this country and in this culture tend to be more extrovertive than introvertive. And the outer world of career success favors a more extrovertive personality type. When we focus on gaining and achieving the things in the outer world in order to achieve our happiness, it makes finding true happiness in the gifts of God all the more difficult. Jesus said this in his Sermon on the Mount, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust consume and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourself treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust consumes, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. In my own life, I learned about the laws of mind action and attraction in my 20s. And that was a long time ago. And I used it a lot to create in the outer, to create in my life, for the businesses I worked in, for my family, and always for the greater good. But it wasn't until about 20 years ago when I entered ministerial school that I realized that it was not about creating out there, but turning within and creating inside. You see, that way, it's not your power, which is limited, but aligning with God's power, which is inexhaustible. It's the single greatest lesson that I've learned in this life. On my journey, there have been wonderful revelations, but mostly those that only I would know. Very private affairs, unnoticed by the world. A quiet walk with God, listening to that still small voice, feeling God in the silence, doing the things that I knew how to do every day, reflecting on the events, receiving a greater guidance, following through, doing the mundane activities of every day. And day by day, as I followed the highest thoughts that I knew, a new world began to open. A new awareness, really, a knowing that in every moment there was a direction, there was a lesson, there was a higher power at work. And based on the results, based on how much I could connect with that, new dimensions would unfold. You see, the point is, the glory of the Lord is for your eyes only. So what does awakening to God's gifts look like? It's living a life and doing the work that's right in front of you. Doing it to the best of our understanding and doing it to the best of our ability. It's praying often, loving at every opportunity, knowing that the power of the living Christ presence is alive in us, looking for every opportunity to express. And the more we clean out that pipeline, the more it expresses. It's reading the daily word in the morning, blessing our creditors as we pay the bills, comforting the neighbor's child who just skinned her knee. You know, that neighbor that we don't get along with. It's being aware that every moment, regardless of what the circumstances appear to be, God is expressing through us as us. When we know that at a deep level, there is no fear. There's only gratitude. It's knowing that our life is unfolding as it should, and all circumstances are there for a blessing. The Buddhists have a saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. I'd say it a little different. I'd say before enlightenment, crab and complain, bitch and moan. After enlightenment, thank you, God. So what does awakening to the gifts of God look like? Well, I'm reminded of a song by John Denver, who describes the changes that occurred to a friend of his after an Earhart Seminars training in the early 70s. Earhart Seminars training was known as EST, Earhart Seminars Training. It's since been rebranded as the Landmark Forum. And I took that course in the early 70s myself. It doesn't have the dangers of the alone experience, but it can be every much as intense. And it will wake you up on what's going inside and what's truly important. You know, sometimes these talks are, I'm thinking all week, What am I going to talk about? What am I going to... And they kind of come at the last minute sometimes. And if I could ever get far enough ahead in my talks to tell Landis what I'm talking about, I'm sure that he would do this song beautifully. But for now, here's some of the words from John Denver's song, Rocky Mountain High. Think in terms of Alan in the Alone series. Think of some of the things that has occurred in your life. Here's what he wrote. He was born in the summer of his 27th year, coming home to a place he'd never been before. He left yesterday behind him. You might say he was born again. You might say he found a key for every door. When he first came to the mountains, his life was far away, on the road and hanging by a song, but the string's already broken. And he doesn't really care. It keeps changing fast and doesn't last for long. Now he walks in quiet solitude, the forests and the streams, seeking grace in every step that he takes. His sight is turned inside himself to try and understand the serenity of a clear blue mountain lake. Now his life is full of wonder, but his heart still knows some fear of a simple thing he cannot comprehend. And a few verses later, kind of sums it up and says, talk to God and listen to the casual reply.
And Colorado, Rocky Mountain High, I've seen it rain and fire in the sky. Talk to God and listen to the casual reply. Rocky Mountain High, Colorado, Rocky Mountain High, Colorado.
Chattanooga High, right here and right now. So let's take a moment, go within, and talk to God. Listen to that casual reply. As we reflect on our life, we're reminded of some of the things that we thought would bring us happiness. And whether they came or whether they didn't, we knew that passed somehow in our life. There was something deeper. It wasn't always easy, but it was enough. I asked for strength, and God gave me difficulties to make me strong. I asked for wisdom, and God gave me problems to solve. I asked for prosperity, and God gave me a brain and arms and feet and ability to work. I asked for love, and God gave me troubled people to help. I asked for courage, and God gave me danger to overcome. I asked for favors, and God gave me opportunities. I received nothing I wanted, I received everything I needed. So as we take a deep breath, we think of all the gifts that we have in our life, right here and right now. Our homes, our friends, our families, this community, a lovely day, a country that is at peace, a country that is filled with opportunities and freedom for us to choose the path that we wish to walk. And so for this and for so much more, say thank you, God. And I'm reminded of the last verse in Rocky Mountain High. Friends around the campfire, and everybody's high. And I don't think he was talking about drugs.
Oh, everybody's so high. I've seen it rain and fire in the sky. Talk to God and listen to the casual reply. Oh, so high. I want to live high. Let's all live high.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Oh, man. Landis, I love what you do.
Me too.
Wow. You know, something I'll just share with you. I script my talks so I don't get too far off key, and it seems that I can do it better by myself sometimes rather than just standing up and going for it. But my meditations are never scripted. They just seem to come. And one thing that I can tell you is sometimes I'll do a meditation with no music in the background, and it's okay. But when you come in underneath with some music, something opens up. Something greater always comes through.
I get as much out of it as you.
Hey. Ah, man. Well, this is the time in our service when we choose to give back, when we choose to experience our abundance and our prosperity, and we know that as we give, so we receive. So I would encourage you to take your tithes and your gifts and your offerings in your hand and just simply repeat with me not only our offering statement, but the words that not only are true, but go to the very essence of the spiritual practice. Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. I give in love, and I receive in abundance. Let the ushers come forward.
Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Oh, thank you, God. I just want to thank you, God.
And so we give thanks for these tithes and these offerings so freely given from hearts filled and overflowing with abundance. We know that they go forward not only to bless each and every one of us, but through us to bless our families, our friends, the places we work for, this community and this country. Thank you, God, for your blessings right here and right now. And so it is. Amen.
Thank you, God. Oh, thank you, God. Thank you, God. I just want to thank you, God. Penny, can I thank Nicole and Tony and Steve for filling in the blanks last week? You guys are wonderful.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. All right.
Well, Doug, that was a pretty powerful message today. You know, how many of us think about owning our own shadows to actually find our strength in life? And that maybe that pain is here for spiritual understanding and empowerment. And what I got out of today's talk is that awakening to the gifts of God will always make you a winner.
Wow.
So now for our announcements. The early bird registration has been extended 1 week for that annual Unity Retreat that's coming up October 2nd called Enlighten Up. And that'll be at Lake Junaluska this year in North Carolina, so there's still time to sign up, and you can see me after church if you are interested. We know that there is great power in prayer, and it is the foundation of the Unity movement. And I want to remind you that we have prayer chaplains here today, both Margaret and Terry, if you would like prayer. I think Laura Noyes will be back next Sunday to do the Moving with Spirit at 10:30. And if you would so like to choose, come and join her in that. It's really a lovely time. Rev Doug is planning to do a new member class sometime in the fall. If that's something of interest to you, please sign up in the back on the back table in the center. And today, both Phaedra and Nicole are here to talk to you and encourage you to join in with the two new spirit groups that are coming in September. These groups provide a transformational experience for you to integrate principles, spiritual principles into your everyday life. And it's also a wonderful platform for creating meaningful connections and friendships within the church. They will be in the back corner over there where you can either sign up or ask them your questions. So before we stand to sing the peace song this morning, I just want to leave with you these words that I saw in a restaurant this week. Life is like ice cream. Be sure to enjoy it before it melts. So please stand and join in singing the peace song.
With God, our Creator, and
together our prayer for protection. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. And as you go forward this week, talk to God and listen to the casual reply. Have a great one.